Today we have one of the most exciting guests we've ever had on Eagle Forum Live, Ann Coulter. She's been changing the discussion for who's going to be president of the United States, and we welcome Ann Coulter.
Yeah, welcome once again to Eagle Forum Live. There's our host, Phyllis Schlafly, well-known conservative commentator, the author of more than 25 books. Well, each week, Phyllis brings you the most important issues of our time, and today's guest says a strange group of greedy and delusional characters are making a fortune off illegal immigration. Who are these people? Ann Coulter joins Phyllis Schlafly to discuss why illegal immigration is the most important issue facing the nation today. And, of course, if you want to join in the conversation, we'll open up the phone lines in just a bit. Now, here's Phyllis.
And we want to talk about some questions like why the Obama administration will not enforce the laws we already have, much less pass the new ones that we need. Welcome, Ann Coulter. We're so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. Boy, you've been at the forefront of this issue. Everyone smart and important has been. Thank heaven we have Donald Trump to come and take it to the people.
Well, it is amazing that he was willing to say things that other people were not willing to say. And you've said it out loud and clear, and I hope you've trained him to say it so people really get it.
Well, he read my book.
Well, I read your book, too.
Recommends that others do so. And I have noticed just even among what we consider sort of establishment types, that really determines what you think of Donald Trump, whether or not you've read my book, because it has a lot of facts that have been carefully hidden from the public by both sides of the media.
Well, I did read your book, and I have to confess I do not read the book of every author I interview, but I certainly read yours. And you know the thing that got me the most was the way these illegal aliens who've been convicted several times and still are welcomed in by the Obama administration go after these very young girls. Now, maybe I can understand a man going after a grown woman, but going after girls who are 10 and 11 years old, it just made me sick to my stomach.
Yes, and it's actually surprisingly common among peasant cultures. In order to give the Democrats votes and businesses cheap labor, since basically 1970, we've been bringing in the most backward peasant, poorest cultures from around the world, very different from pre-1970 immigration. So that's great if you're a rich person and you want to keep driving down the wages of your already lowest paid workers. It's great if you're the Democrats because the immigrants come in, need a lot of the poor immigrants, need a lot of government services. So, of course, there's just going to be block voting for the Democrats. They also have no history of running a constitutional republic. So the Democrats have a whole new group of people block voting for them. But it's terrible in a lot of ways for culture and society. And the treatment, it's always the weakest members of society who are harmed the most without a strong rule of law and an advanced culture. It's the women, the children, the elderly, the plants, the animals, from honor killings to animal sacrifice, massive amounts of child rape, human trafficking, slavery, things that this country just simply isn't used to. And what got me into writing so much about it was how it was not only hidden, these facts are not only hidden by our government, but hidden by the media in hilarious ways, which is why I have all those chapters on, Spot the Immigrant with the mainstream media article, often from a place like the New York Times, and you read through trying to figure out if the average reader would have any idea that these were Mexican illegal immigrants who raped and murdered the two little 12-year-old girls in Texas, or any idea that the gang rape of little girls in Fresno, California was committed by Hmong. Somehow these articles always end with, wandering off into a reverie about, oh, yes, and I remember hearing about a fraternity gang rape one day.
Well, how does Mexico benefit from our illegal immigration? Is that a big deal with Mexico?
Oh, it absolutely is, and boy, is Trump right about this. For one thing, it is true. They get rid of a lot of their worst people. Not only...
You think they are deliberately doing that?
Yes, I remember back in they're certainly not hurting. They're certainly not trying to stop it. But also, periodically reports, I remember, I think Tom Tancredo and various others produced these pamphlets they gave during one of the last periods of Mexicans where there's a huge stream of them coming up, a huge migration. The president of Mexico was working up little first aid kits and maps, and here's how you get to America.
What do you think about Jeb Bush saying that when we let these illegals in, it's an act of love?
I don't think that helped him.
I don't think
with
so.
The voters. That's why he's polling at 4%, though. Oh, Wall Street loved him. He was the man to beat. Who knew he'd be taken down so quickly? Well, I knew he'd fall eventually. But wow, that was his campaign was over in the blink of an eye. I think with people like the Bushes and a lot of the Wall Street types, it's not even. I mean, there are different things going on. Part of it is their big donors do love having all the cheap labor.
And that's the main reason, isn't it? The cheap labor that they want?
Yes. I would say that is I mean, usually, or not usually, but often the follow the money argument is simplistic and untrue. I think it is very true in this case. They get cheap workers, even not so much the cheap labor workers, wages are being depressed, but Silicon Valley computer programmers and, accountants at Toys R Us, as we saw from a New York Times article this week, and Disneyland. They're just getting cheaper and cheaper foreign labor to replace Americans. That's great for business, but it's bad for America. But there's also the social anxiety aspect of it. These guys, by which I mean the donor class, the Republican lobbyists, the Wall Street crowd, they get cheaper and cheaper domestics while marching around like they're Martin Luther King, which is why I make a big point in my book of saying, no, immigrants aren't black. The reason we're sensitive to race in America is because of the legacy of slavery, because of the legacy of Jim Crow. Someone who has never set foot in this country, we didn't do anything to you. I mean, I'm not wild about, the Democrats' idea of this is how we're going to make up for slavery. I know, we'll destroy the black family with elaborate welfare programs. Okay, put that aside, put a pin in that. At least we do owe something to African Americans. They are our fellow citizens. We don't owe anything to a Somali or a Mexican who arrived yesterday. All we have done is go around the world and save people from earthquakes, from warlords, from tsunamis. We're the world's Red Cross. We're clearing off the pirate lanes. No, if anything, they owe us. But instead, if you arrived yesterday in America, you'll get affirmative action over American kids applying to colleges, applying for business loans, and so on and so forth. Well, this is piggybacking on the black experience in America. Part of the reason I think Trump is so popular with black people, and he is. Finally, someone is speaking for them and not just saying, vote for us, the other party hates you.
Well, why are so many conservatives so eager to surrender on this issue of immigration?
I think a lot of them aren't that smart, to be honest with you. They know it's, again, a social anxiety thing, because I've been reading through some of the attacks on him, and it doesn't make any sense. For one thing, the first thing you do when you see an attack on Donald Trump, calling him a clown, an oaf, a buffoon, not a Republican, which I think half the country is going to say, not a Republican? That's fantastic, is I always search for the word immigration. Yeah. And when you get article after article talking about Trump's appeal without mentioning immigration, you're being lied to. It's about immigration. Look at the rallies. Look at what gets people on their feet cheering. It was what he talked about in his announcement speech for president, that business about Mexican rapists. It has been it was the first policy paper he put out, and for the first 3 months, that was pretty much all there was.
We were talking with Ann Coulter, who I guess has turned into the world's experts on the problem of illegal immigration and what the damage is that they're doing to our country.
Now let's talk to some of our listeners around the country. Let's invite them in right now, Phyllis. 1-800-736-3202. Again, the toll-free number here on Eagle Forum Live, if you'd like to call in and talk, is 1-800-736-3202. And, of course, you can join Phyllis anytime online at eagleforum.org. Even send in an email question to the program Eagle Forum Live.
Eagle Forum Education Center in St. Louis is the headquarters of Eagle Forum's many educational activities. The center houses a large library of 20th century American history, a unique collection of DVDs and CDs, and extraordinary archives. Eagle Forum's publications include Education Reporter, bringing you important news about parents' rights and public school curriculum. Eagle Forum sponsors activities especially for college students and for teen Eagles, including an annual Collegians Leadership Summit held each summer in Washington, D.C. Eagle Forum sponsors 2 radio series, Phyllis Schlafly's 3-minute commentaries heard daily on 550 stations, and This Saturday Live call-in program now heard on 75 stations. Both broadcasts are streamed on the internet at eagleforum.org. Eagle Forum, a conservative organization of dedicated Americans, invites you to visit our website at eagleforum.org.
Are you worried about the future of America and the kind of country your children will be living in? Do you think that one person cannot make a difference, so why bother to write your representatives? If you think that, you need to join Eagle Forum, a national organization of conservative and pro-family men and women who have learned how to participate and be effective in the process of self-government and public policy making. Eagle Forum's achievements prove that citizen volunteers can affect government policies in Congress, state legislatures, city councils, and school boards. Our members have been successful in electing candidates at every level and in persuading them to vote for good policies after they are elected. It's obvious there is much more to do, and that's why we need your help. You can get a free sample of our materials by writing Eagle Forum, Alton, Illinois 62002. That's Eagle Forum, Alton, Illinois 62002, or by going to our website, eagleforum.org. That's eagleforum.org.
Here's your big chance to ask Ann Coulter, who knows more about immigration and I think foreign policy than probably anybody else who's willing to speak out. And I'm glad you've been giving some good information to Donald Trump, who has maybe a louder voice than some of the rest of us and is willing to speak out, and that's good for us to know the truth.
That's the voice of our host, Phyllis Schlafly, with you every week on Eagle Forum Live as we start working in questions, comments from around the country. We'll begin in Springfield, Missouri, listening to Bott Radio Network. Here's Neil. Phyllis.
Hi, Neil. Welcome.
Hello. I wanted to ask Ann if she knew the facts of this case, fairly well-known case in San Francisco with this young woman who was slain, because I know O'Reilly said last night, and he's made it kind of a cause célèbre, but he said last night that she was shot in the head by this guy. But I've heard other versions where of course, he claimed it was accidental, but I heard one version where the shot had ricocheted off something else before she was struck. And, of course, it's tragic either way, but I think the question of intent is relevant. And I just wondered if Ms. Coulter knew for a certainty what the facts in that case were.
Well, the trial, I suppose, will decide it, but, yeah, of course he said it was accidental. Every time a murderer commits a murder, he says, oops, the gun just went off in my hand. So I wouldn't believe that. My understanding was that she wasn't shot in the head. It was through the stomach. She grabbed her stomach and said, I don't feel well, and collapsed in her father's arms. O'Reilly keeps talking about his Cates law that would require a 5-year sentence for any illegal alien who is deported for committing a felony, comes back and commits another felony. Well, it's already a 20-year felony if you do that. It's simply not being enforced. If only there was someone with a best-selling book on the topic he could put on his show who could tell him this. One other thing I think it's worth mentioning about the illegal immigrant accused murderer in that case is that all of his other felonies were what we keep hearing about, those nonviolent drug crimes. Separate issue here, but this is the problem with Rand Paul and the people who think, oh, I know how to appeal to the black community. Let's appeal to black criminals. And that's sort of been Rand Paul's thing. No, Republicans win on law and order. We need a society where women walking with their fathers on a San Francisco pier aren't worried about being shot in the stomach. And this guy, all of his crimes until then were those lovely nonviolent drug felonies that apparently never lead to violence, and we have too many of them in the prisons. No, keep them in the prisons. We don't want them shooting Katie Steinle.
Well, you're right. I can remember many elections that Republicans won on the issue of law and order. It's a good issue for Republicans.
Yes, as is immigration, but we have to keep dragging these Republicans into it, kicking and screaming. Well, not Giuliani, not Nixon, not some others. But yeah, law and order is a huge issue for Republicans. I knew immigration, if anyone picked this up and took it. And incidentally, as I think I told your group, I have spoken to two Republican presidential candidates, past or present, laid out, far in advance of Trump. Whoever thought Trump was really going to run for president? He has a great life. Why would he bother? But I gave them the entire Trump plan on immigration. This is how you win as a Republican. I found one of them because I'd written it in an email from more than a year ago, and I need to resend it to the presidential candidates at issue and say, stop listening to your advisors and hang on my every word, because if you had followed this policy, it was point by point, the Trump policy on immigration, you could be Trump now.
And Coulter on the phone, Phyllis Schlafly, the host. If you'd like to join in the program, 800-736-3202. Next up is Wichita, Kansas. Phyllis, here's Fred.
Hi, Fred.
Hello. I'm looking forward to the book by Anne called Adios.
It's
Slavery.
wonderful. You'll like it.
I really believe that slavery now is larger than it has ever been, even if you add up all of history. But my premise is that when you buy humans, whether it is for good or bad, it's slavery. And we're enticing people over here and giving them money and thinking that it's good, and it might be good for them, but it's slavery. We're enticing them for wrong reasons. And I don't think my question is so much about the good that can happen, but it's not only I'm way off point here.
It's not only the wrong reasons, but it's taking jobs from Americans. And I think our government and our government policies ought to be designed to stand up for America. What about that, Ann?
Absolutely right, and one important point that I kind of blew over at the beginning is the cheap labor, as the saying goes, is only cheap for the employer. Maybe you're getting your strawberries at 1 penny less than they would otherwise be, but you are subsidizing that cheap labor through your taxes for immigrant services, English languages, more students in the schools, admissions to the hospitals where all the health care is taken care of, the food stamps. As we know, and we're talking about legal immigrants as well as illegal immigrants, all of whom are coming from very poor, backwards cultures. They are consuming enormous amounts of government services, far more likely to be on welfare. A majority of immigrants legal immigrants are on welfare, getting government assistance. Why would any country bring in people who immediately need the taxpayers to support them? It's utter madness. But the cheap labor, it is just unbelievably short-sighted, traitorous, selfish, narcissistic of these businessmen to take advantage of the cheap labor so they can make their pile, while they are not only charging the American people to subsidize that cheap labor, but wrecking the country culturally, the traditions. One other thing I'd say about the cheap labor point is I really think what we're seeing now with the, for lack of a better term, the establishment Republicans, the Washington insiders, and
you can call them the kingmakers if you want to.
The kingmakers, yes, and their willing handmaidens in much of the conservative media. It seems to me we are facing the breakup of the Republican Party as when the Republicans broke from the Whigs. And look at what it's over. Once again, it's about cheap labor for the rich.
Well, and of course it's very costly to the taxpayers because
yes.
It's very costly.
Yes, not to mention the facial reconstruction services, the trials, the policemen, the jail costs. There's so many costs that aren't even included. $22 billion a year being sent by Mexican immigrants in America back to Mexico. That's keeping Mexico's economy afloat. Mexico is as wealthy a country as it is because the American taxpayer is basically being bilked to pay for these services, housing, food stamps, so on and so forth. The birth of all these children with lots of problems, it can cost lots of money. So the American taxpayer is being taxed to subsidize cheap labor. Half of those wages then get sent back to Mexico to, the grandmothers in Chiapas to be spent on Mexican goods. Why could we just cut a check directly from the federal government to, Carlos Slim?
Well, how do you account for the ones who say, "Oh, we're going to give them a path to citizenship, and then they'll be okay"?
Oh, it is that is a different self-interest. Of course, you still have the cheap labor.
Of course, they want them to vote.
It's the only thing the Democrats want. It's the only thing they want. We just want them voting. Yes, we will subsidize them. We need them voting. Republicans going along with it, and actually you get a lot of ethnic activists going along with it, and perhaps Jeb Bush. They want to be king of the Hispanics. It improves their media profile, their desirability as a figure to run for some small office or big office if you're a Democrat. It helps them. It doesn't help the immigrants already here. They don't want more poor people competing with them. It drives their wages down. But Jorge Ramos and Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio, suddenly they're much more important in a country that's 30% Hispanic.
And I monitor the NEA convention every year, and they for years have been calling for a national holiday for Cesar Chavez, who was a big advocate of the immigrants coming in, but he was never in favor of these illegals coming in because he knew they took jobs away from the ones who were already here.
That's right. He called them wetbacks and went down and protested at the border. Someone else who I believe went to the border, I know he was strongly against illegal immigrants coming in, Jesse Jackson. Because who does it hurt? It hurts the poorest Americans, including recent immigrants, especially black Americans, especially black teenagers, trying to get entry-level jobs. The black unemployment rate has been through the roof, but rich businessmen don't care, and Democrats don't care, and Hillary doesn't care. Who is speaking for these people? Donald Trump.
Well, what about this lie that they say they do jobs that Americans just won't do?
I love this idea. How did this country manage to get these jobs done for the first 400 years? Somehow Americans used to do these jobs. No, you might have to pay $1 more, but then on the bright side, your taxes won't be so high. And a lot of it is just laziness. They've always done it this way. I mean, there are machines that can pick tomatoes, pick strawberries. Strawberries are very difficult we're going, robotic and everything else, but agriculture can't do it. There are machines that can pick strawberries, which are apparently difficult to pick, but it has 3 little cameras on it. It tells you exactly when the strawberry is ripe. It doesn't need unemployment insurance. It doesn't go home to sleep. It can work through the night. But farmers complain, we know we have those machines, but it would cost $1 million. Well, I understand that, no one single farmer is going to want to spend $1 million. These are a competitive disadvantage, but this is why you need a government solution here. If all of them are required to buy that same machine, you're not at a competitive disadvantage. We pay 1 penny more for strawberries, but on the bright side, our country isn't destroyed.
Well, do you think that the Mexican government actively incentivizes this illegal immigration?
Oh, I think so. They get rid of their poor. As I said, they found, the Mexican government proposing that we give the poorest of the poor in our country. Let's give them maps and first aid kits and bottles of water to make it across the border. And it's good for them. It's good for their the richest man in the world, as he's often described.
Right.
Carlos Slim, a Mexican of Lebanese descent, and, he has a monopoly on 40% of the Mexican stock market are companies owned by Carlos Slim, who also saves the New York Times from bankruptcy, which is why I do not trust the New York Times coverage of illegal immigration. Carlos Slim directly benefits by having that $22 billion in remittances sent home from immigrants in America back to their grandmothers in Chiapas.
Eagle Forum Live, keeping American families informed for 26 years. And on today's docket, are today's illegal immigrants coming here to be free or live for free at taxpayer expense? And Coulter and Phyllis Schlafly together here on Eagle Forum Live, and you on the toll-free at 1-800-736-3202.
Are you concerned about border security or about the effect that millions of illegal aliens are having on illegal drugs, crime, disease, and healthcare costs? These are only some of the many subjects of national importance covered in the Phyllis Schlafly Report, a monthly newsletter Phyllis has been writing for 42 years. The Phyllis Schlafly Report covers a lot of other subjects too, such as education, both public school and college, court cases, family and feminism, healthcare, and United Nations treaties. The Phyllis Schlafly Report always gives you more facts and fewer words than anything in print. This newsletter is also useful to carry with you to share with your friends. You can get a free copy of the Phyllis Schlafly Report on a subject of your particular interest by calling Eagle Forum at 1-800-736-3202. Or you can log on to Eagle Forum's website at eagleforum.org. That's eagleforum.org.
The Phyllis Schlafly Report is a unique newsletter that is in its 42nd year of monthly publication. Phyllis Schlafly writes about topics that are so important to you, your family, and your family's future. You can request a sample report at any time. Recent issues on education include how to train our leaders to be conservative, the radical resolutions passed by the National Education Association, and liberal plans to subvert the U.S. Constitution. Other reports cover such vital topics as what's happening on college campuses, how the public schools are turning out liberals, the rising costs of tolerating illegal aliens, and Congress must curb activist judges. The Phyllis Schlafly Report is the best bargain in print. It's full of useful information you can use to write your congressman and educate your friends. Get a free sample by calling 1-800-736-3202. That's 1-800-736-3202. Or online, go to eagleforum.org.
Before we go any farther with this program, I want to publicly thank Ann Coulter for making immigration, both legal and illegal, an issue in this country, which most of the candidates and prominent people didn't want to talk about. They wanted to pretend it was just something that happened without anybody doing it. And we need to realize how it is changing our country and trying to make the rest of the country like California.
That's the voice of Phyllis Schlafly. And Coulter, to whom she speaks, is right there on the telephone. And we have listeners coming into the conversation on 800-736-3202. Let's see here. Patrick in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Phyllis.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi. My question this week is why do Republicans get lured into speaking the Democrat language? Because they call themselves Democratic instead of Democrat, and there's nothing Democratic about them. They try to make us believe that contraception and birth control are the same things. And why do Republicans especially call it a government shutdown instead of a government slowdown? Because the whole government isn't shut down.
Well, those are some good questions. What about that, Ann Coulter?
Yeah, I like government slowdown. On a lot of the language issues, yes, of course, you're right. But as a writer, I've considered this in the past, and sometimes, it's just confusing to use words that are more accurate, but no one understands what they mean. I mean, at this point, people understand that Democrat, when you're talking about Republican Democrat, what that means is the party of abortion and not, we love democracy. On a larger version of your question, why do Republicans get tricked into using the language of the Democrats? I would say the larger point is the messaging of the Democrats and being constantly fooled by the Democrats into obsessing over, in this case, right now, getting a slightly larger portion of the Hispanic vote. Look, the Hispanic vote is about 12% of the vote, and I think you can do a little better driving up get a few more points of the white vote. But this is a trick Republicans have fallen for over and over again. Back when Phyllis Schlafly was remaking the Republican Party, half the Republicans were for abortion. The Republican platform was for the Equal Rights Amendment, which young kids listening today don't even know what that is. God bless you, Phyllis Schlafly.
Well, it does show we can beat the establishment.
Yes, but Republicans over and over again, they fall for this idea that we have to get more of the feminist vote. We need to get more of the pro-abortion vote. You don't see Democrats going around saying, we have to increase our share of the gun lobby vote. And we have to get more fundamentalist Christians voting for us. No, they just say, we are losing that vote. And, the big success for Republicans with the Hispanic vote is supposed to be George Bush, who basically turned his entire White House, the second George Bush, the son, into an Hispandering operation. He still lost the Hispanic vote. He just lost it by only 60%. So Republicans, how about you do what Ronald Reagan was? He comes along. I mean, they all say they want to be Ronald Reagan, but boy, they are not acting like Ronald Reagan. They can't understand that this is a different century now, and there are different problems facing America. Ronald Reagan came along and said clearly, I am pro-life, I'm anti-ERA, I'm pro-gun, and the people loved it. And that is what Donald Trump is doing right now on immigration.
Let's run over to Chicago to talk to John, Phyllis.
Hi, John. Welcome.
Yeah, how you doing? Okay, real quick question. What happens when the country becomes the majority, it becomes non-white, and how's that going to affect Republican politics then? Are they going to conform to the, anti-government type, individuals, or are they going to have to open up their platform to include more people? And what about the Syrian population that Obama wants to populate in every city? Is that going to damage the immigration more on the Republican side, or is that going to help their Democrats to try to get more votes for them?
Sounds like a lot of bad news you're predicting. What about that, Ann?
Yeah, he's absolutely right. It's a complete disaster, which is why, so many of us have been pulling our hair out over the Republican Party committing suicide. Look, the mass immigration of the poorest of the poor to America is changing the country in a lot of ways that no one should be happy with, thus the media hides it. But looking at it purely from a partisan perspective, it is the end of the Republican Party. The entire country becomes California, and as I said in my column this week, any Republican running for president saying he wants to increase immigration should first be required to run for governor of California on a platform of low taxes and social conservatism and win that election. Because if you can't win that election, then I want to know why you want to turn the entire country into a state where Republicans cannot win statewide anymore. Yeah, how are Syrian refugees? Are you going to get them voting by offering a flat tax? By offering to cut the corporate tax? Oh, sure, we'll eliminate gay marriage and the export-import bank just as soon as we get these voodoo priests from Haiti to agree with us. Republicans, are you out of your minds? The country is completely slipping away. We're not going to be able to do anything. Once the country becomes California, it will just be a Disneyland for Democrats. We'll have an endless string of President Obamas, 9 Ruth Bader Ginsburgs on the Supreme Court. How are you going to overturn Roe v. Wade then? You can't win a national election. No, this is the end of the Republican Party and the end of the country if this continues. Not only illegal immigration, but the legal immigration too, because that's basically the same people. That distinction that a lot of Republicans, and I'm so happy Trump does not do this.
He's done a great service by making it an issue and making people talk about it and making whoever believe that the grassroots care about this issue.
Yes, and he's sailing in the polls. A lot of Republicans and journalists, I have had to beat them over the head with this distinction between legal and illegal immigration. No, it's the same people. You don't hear Republicans saying, well, I'm for legal high taxation. I'm just against illegal taxation. Well, no, we're against taxation. We want small government and low taxes. And it's the same thing with immigration. So many people say, oh, no, we're only talking about illegals, only talking about illegals. I really think in the back of their minds what they mean is, they're thinking of the grandparents coming in at Ellis Island and so on. You must always remember the post-1970 immigrants are a completely different order of business, different from the pre-1970 immigrants. Pre-1970
That's right. I have so many friends who arrived and stood their kid up and said, now we're in America, we're going to be Americans, we're going to speak English, and this is our country.
Yes, and get educated and make money. Pre-1970 immigrants did make more money than the native population.
And they were pro-American.
More homes.
I mean, if you look at the movies in the 1920s, they were pro-American.
Yes, absolutely.
Because these smart people came over and made movies, and they were all for America.
But now we have immigration lobbies who run by leftists who hate America, want to see America humbled and destroyed, and they are bringing in people hostile to the native population. Get them on welfare and get them voting.
Let's see what John has on mind at Salina, Kansas, Phyllis.
Hi, John. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Hey, when I was filling out my tax return for 2014, I was looking at the earned income credit and the qualifications for it. And in order to qualify, you have to have a dependent. But it used to say, you just asked if you had a dependent. Now it says, do you have a dependent who is a citizen of the United States or who is a resident of the United States, Canada, or Mexico? So now we're not only subsidizing Mexico by sending money from people that are working here, but if they have dependents who are still in Mexico, they can claim an earned income credit and send that money to those people.
There is so much money of your taxpayer money that is supposed to be paying for the American poor. We have our own poor people. We don't need to pay for other poor people here. We certainly don't need to be...
Of course, the rest of the world is poor.
Yeah, no, and I don't know why we can't help them in situ, why they have to come here. Oh, that's right, the Democrats need the votes. But this is there was just an article in the Sun Sentinel today. So much of this welfare being accepted by immigrants is being sent directly out of the country. The Cubans are doing it. Big article in the Sun Sentinel today, where young Cubans will come across, sign up as an American for welfare, and then go back and live in Cuba while collecting their EITC benefits payments, or this payment, that payment. It's craziness. We have here in New York, the New York Post had a big story about cartons that are made up of food and goods that get sent by Dominican immigrants back to the Dominican Republic. It's utter madness how we are being taken to the cleaners, which is why, again, you have to read my book, Adios, America.
And I do recommend that. I read every word of it, and it's worth reading because it'll tell you a lot of things that you will not otherwise learn.
Eagle Forum Live goes to Seattle. Phyllis, say hello to Bob.
Hello, Bob. Welcome.
Yeah, how you doing? Real quick questions. What about the feminists, the gay supporters? Are they for this immigration, all this mass immigration is coming to this country that's taking over all the power, draining the treasuries and diffusing the government of their power? And what about Republicans in the general elections and future elections? Are they going to not be able to maintain the majorities of white voters due to the Hispanic and all these illegal immigrants, Muslims? Would that affect how the Republicans change, or will they just be going away, disappearing in the future? Thanks.
Yes, absolutely right. This is why everything is secondary to immigration, every single policy. I often tell people, whatever you think the most important issue is, unless you say it's immigration, you're wrong, and I will explain why. If you think it's ending Obamacare, yeah, how are you going to do that when Republicans can't win the presidency? And that is coming faster than I think people realize. When we can't possibly have a majority in the Senate or the House anymore, there will be, the occasional small little pocket of Republicans out there someplace. What is your plan? All these detailed plans for how to save Social Security and repeal Obamacare. Well, forget about all that. These are irrelevant, pointless arguments. How are you going to end abortion when you can't get a Republican in the White House? Everything is secondary to immigration. Ronald Reagan was quoted as saying, and I always love this, I think really a lot of his understanding of America came from those GE tours and meeting real Americans. It does change your perspective, but he used to have a saying, you can always trust the American people. I think that's true. I just want to limit the vote to the American people.
On immigration, Ann Coulter says when the bathtub is overflowing, the very first thing you do is turn off the water. Fairly simple. And today, visiting with Phyllis Schlafly here on Eagle Forum Live. If you've been trying to get into the conversation, we have a telephone line available. Call us. 1-800-736-3202. Again, 1-800-736-3202. By the way, you can join Phyllis Schlafly anytime online. She has plenty of past radio programs, past articles, lots of Phyllis Schlafly at eagleforum.org.
The biggest scandal in education today is allowing children to be promoted from grade to grade and even graduate from high school without ever learning how to read. Schools should teach kids how to read in the first grade by a real phonics method. Parents can be easily fooled because first graders are able to memorize a few dozen one-syllable words, and then the books use those same words over and over again. How can you tell if your child is really reading, or if he's just reciting a few words he's memorized and guessing at others? Phyllis Schlafly has developed a simple reading test you can use at home to find out whether your child can actually read or is just guessing at the words. Make sure your son or daughter has every chance to succeed. Don't leave it up to the schools to teach your child this vital skill. Order your free reading test by calling 1-800-700-5228. That's 1-800-700-5228. Or see this test online at turboreader.com.
You've probably heard that all public schools are mandated to give reading tests, and many parents are worrying whether their children will pass. If you want to find out if your child's reading skills are all they should be, we invite you to give Eagle Forum's first reading test in the privacy of your own home. Any child who has finished first grade should be able to pass this test. It will enable you to find out if your child can really read, or if he has been taught to memorize a few dozen frequently used words and then just guess at other words from the pictures on the page. Eagle Forum's simple test will tell you whether your child is really reading. Don't let your child fall behind in school because he is a poor reader. Call 1-800-700-5228 and ask for our free reading test. That's 1-800-700-5228. And you can see Eagle Forum's first reading test on the website turboreader.com. Look up the website www.turboreader.com.
Today, Phyllis Schlafly's guest is Ann Coulter, saying that immigration is the most important issue facing America today. A number of Americans want to join in this conversation on Eagle Forum Live. 800-736-3202. Let's take our next caller here, Phyllis. Welcome to the program. We welcome you to Eagle Forum Live. Please go right ahead.
Hello. Welcome.
Is this Katie in St. Louis? I'll tell you what, I'll bet this is Katie in St. Katie, are you there? No, apparently not. Let's try one more here. Welcome to Eagle Forum Live. Is this Francisco? Apparently. How about Jim in Phoenix, Arizona? Are you there? All right, I'll tell you what, Phyllis, we'll work in some email questions here. You've got a few. I've got a few. Kelly from Los Angeles writes in, what about Kate's Law? Please talk about that a little bit. And is Kate's Law going to pass? How about that, Ann Coulter?
Well, I did. I mean, this is kind of a vote just to show how much, how insane the Democrats are on this, and a lot of the establishment Republicans. Sure, okay, make it a mandatory minimum, but as I was saying earlier, the law already on the books makes it a 20 up to, not mandatory, but up to a 20-year felony. 20 years in prison if you are a deported illegal immigrant for having committed a felony and then re-enter the country. It's already a felony. We already have these laws on the books that you're not supposed to be releasing illegal immigrants after they commit crimes with a promise to come back to the trial. So a lot of what's going on is please just enforce the laws already on the books. This is, incidentally, fundamentally why when I began writing this book, which was actually going to be just a few chapters of another book, my original thought was, let's just get back to pre-1970 immigrants, because we'd like, as Trump says beautifully, I think, we do want to bring in immigrants that will make this country better. We want immigrants who are better than us, not worse than us, not even the same as us. Let's get in the best people from the world. But then writing the book, I just realized we are up against so many leftist organizations, and they become immigration judges. There is just a huge movement of the left in America to destroy this country by dumping the third world on it. And that's why I call for in my book, and have been pushing it for some time, first, we need an immigration moratorium. Let's get the wall built. Let's deport the illegals. Let's enforce the laws we have, assimilate the ones already here. We need a little bit of a break now. Since Teddy Kennedy's 1965 immigration passed 50 years ago this week, we have taken in 59 million immigrants. 59 million. Does anyone driving around Los Angeles think, oh, we need even more people on the streets out here? And doing enormous destruction to our country and obviously to the Republican
Party. Well, I think when we took a stay in immigration several decades ago, we called it a pause, and I think that's a good word. We need a pause. It was the most
prosperous period in American history. After that, in 1924. That's it. Okay, too many immigrants have been coming in. We're going to shut it down for a while, assimilate the ones here. And it was a boom time for America.
But, Ann, the people coming in now have no experience with limited government. They don't even know what you're talking about if you talk about limited government. And so they just have no comprehension of what we want them to comport with when they get in here. And the question is, are they going to be dependent on government? I think there's some kind of a pledge that you have to sign when you come in that says you will not be dependent on the people, but they come in and they're dependent. Never enforced.
No, also you're supposed to, pass an English language test. Meanwhile, the Voting Rights Act comes along and says you little small localities and state governments have to print ballots in all these foreign languages. There's some precincts in America where they're printing ballots in 80 different languages. What is the point of that? They are not going to be speaking Urdu on the Senate floor.
No, and hiring teachers.
Ballots be printed in Urdu.
Hiring teachers teaching foreign languages, whereas the way we became an English-speaking country was the immigrants came in and put their kids in school. Their kids only spoke English, came home and taught their parents.
Memphis, Tennessee. Phyllis, here's Bill.
Hi, Bill. Welcome.
Hey, I want to preface what I'm saying by saying that I'm not going to give up, and I'm not going to stop working, and I'm not going to stop trying to educate the young people, but our country's already so fundamentally transformed that it would be unrecognizable in every way to the founders. And the problem, the reason why it's not going to be okay, and I don't think it's ever going to be okay, is because half of the people in this country understand the Constitution and the foundation principles that we live under, and half of them don't, and they don't care. That's the first reason. The second, the reason we have the leaders and the problems we have in this country today, the fundamental reason is because we have murdered 60 million babies in this country since the 1960s. Not only just murdered them, but we've tortured them and mutilated them and everything else. And things are just not going to be okay. And I'm not saying that.
And I hope these videos that have been shown on television are going to wake people up to what we've done.
Two things, Bill. For one thing, I think you said you're from Tennessee. Anyone in Tennessee, I'm speaking at the University of Tennessee in Chattanooga this Monday at 12 noon and signing books, so please come see me. University of Tennessee in Chattanooga. But point two, I have a lot of friends who are, you could go on. There are a lot of reasons to be discouraged right now. But I do think there's hope. I wouldn't have written this book if I did not think there was hope. Then Donald Trump came along. It is still possible for a Republican to win a national election now by slightly increasing the white vote, something, I mean, we're going to have to pick up, white people off the floor when they realize a politician is finally asking for their vote. They've been taken advantage of, just completely ignored, taken for granted by the Democrats wrote off white voters in 65. That is why they needed the 1965 Immigration Act. The Democrats have not been able to get a majority of white people.
For which we blame Kennedy.
Yes, since 1948. That was the last time a majority of white people voted for Democrats, other than the 64 landslide for LBJ that proceeded to wreck the country. So to have Republicans do what Democrats do, appeal to your base. Your base is white voters, Republicans. Trump is going to have people voting for him who have not voted in 20 years. Trump can win. We have a wall. We deport the illegals already here. We have a pause, as you say, moratorium on taking in new immigrants. Once Republicans can win elections again, as I was saying before we went to the last break, you can trust the American people to vote right. But we're being outvoted by foreigners right now. This has got to stop. Another fantastic part of Trump's plan is, no more anchor babies. I say you make it retroactive. It is outrageous that people can force their way into this citizenship in this wonderful country without the consent of Americans. It's craziness. It's insane. It's not required by the Constitution. We ought to throw out the anchor babies, too.
Now, Daryl joins the conversation, Springfield, Missouri.
Hi, Daryl. Welcome.
Just a second. Hi. Good afternoon, ladies. Hey, there's 2 points I'd like to bring up, and then I'll go on hold and listen to your conversation. First, the answer to immigration has taken away the incentive for both the people and the immigrants that benefit from it. And then second, I think we really need to talk about the benefits of removing the immigration problem to the American people, the taxpayers, the job seekers, and the others like that. With that said, thank you very much.
Well, I do think the immigration problem is a direct attack on the jobs of low-paid men and women.
Yes, and again, who does that hurt the most? It has hurt African Americans the most. I think Donald Trump will get a shockingly high percentage of the black vote for a Republican.
Let's quickly run to North Platte, Nebraska to talk to John. Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Hi, Phyllis and Ann. What a pleasure to talk to two of my heroes. I'd like to ask you also about Ben Carson and Ted Cruz. Very, very fine candidates, and I'm sure their views mirror yours as well as their fate. Could you talk about those two?
You got it.
Sure. In general, I'm against, and in fact, I've made this point volubly over the years to Republicans, would you forget the guys who aren't politicians? It's got to be at least a governor, maybe a senator. I'm talking about Ben Carson here. I warned Republicans about that with, Newt Gingrich, Michelle Bachmann, Herman Cain, Steve Forbes, Pat Buchanan. I fell for a lot of these in the past, and then I realized, no, it's got to be a governor. They've shown they can win. We know what all the scandals are. I'm making an exception in this case for only one person, Donald Trump. I'm also only making an exception to my no divorcees rule, only for Donald Trump. And by the way, if any of the other guys, if they want my vote, they could start talking about immigration the way Trump has. But look at the fact that they won't. Isn't that stunning? Cruz is smart enough, I agree. He's a very smart man, very articulate. He's smart enough to know, oh my gosh, this is a winning issue. I should pick up on this. I go through all the presidential candidates in about 5 pages, maybe 2 pages, at the end of my book.
And I urge everybody to read Ann Coulter's book, which is called Adios, America. And many of us are not ready to say Adios, America. We want to protect our country.
Coming up next week, do you have a loved one killed or harmed by illegal immigration? The conversation continues about illegal immigration next week, right here on Eagle Forum Live with Phyllis Schlafly. Join Phyllis anytime online at eagleforum.org.